Hey, you're listening to the Riverdale Podcast. This is episode number 80. My name is Jonathan. Welcome to lovely Riverdale, USA. This is a weekly Archie Comics fan podcast. We update every Saturday morning, and every week we break things down into 4 categories. The first category is the book of the week. That's the comic book I read this week. Sometimes it's a new comic book, sometimes it's an old comic book, but it's always an Archie comic book. We move then to the news of the week. That's what happened in the world of Archie in the week since our last podcast. We jump then to new releases. That's what came out this past Wednesday, what will be coming up this coming Wednesday from Archie. And finally this week, we're going to be looking at an upcoming collected edition. That's what the show looks like this week. Let's get on to the book of the week. This week's book of the week is Archie Giant Series Magazine Presents Pep Comics. This is Archie Giant Series number 614. Now, we talked about the Archie Giant series a few weeks back when we talked about Little Archie. That was also an issue that came out as part of the Archie Giant series. And the publication history of this series is baffling. You can go back and try to sort it out for yourself. But it has never really fully been explained, and maybe there isn't a full explanation for it, but suffice it to say that in the indicia on the first page, it says, Archie Giant Series Magazine, number 614, October 1990, is printed in the U.S., published 12 times a year, once in August and November, 3 times in January and September, and 4 times in October. There you go. That's just the tip of the iceberg for the strange publishing history of the Archie Giant series. But enough about that. This issue is crazy. This is, of course, under the title of Pep Comics, which, as all of you know, is a hugely important title in the history of Archie. It's the title in which Archie first appeared, Pep Comics number 22, back in 1941. And I believe at this time, the official Pep title had been canceled in the late 80s. And there were a couple issues a year coming out with the Pep title on it under the Archie Giant series. This particular issue is crazy. Here on the cover, which you've just got to see, head over to RiverdalePodcast.com and check out the cover for this. It is Archie, Betty, Veronica, Chuck, Jughead, and Hot Dog in the 90s, the 80s and 90s version of the Jalopy. Driving down the street behind them is a van with Reggie, Moose, and Dilton, and they have just pulled into Mamaroneck, New York, the home of Archie Comics. This is an issue in which the Riverdale kids go to the Archie Comics offices. I'll let that sit with you for a moment. It is really preposterous. It's sort of Elseworlds-ish. It reminds me a lot of like when the Justice Leagues of like Earth 1 and Earth 2 would meet up. I guess the Justice League and the Justice Society would meet up. It's a little bit like that. It's really odd. Credits on this one. This is written by Karen A. Suka. I've never seen her name before. I'll definitely have to look it up and see what else she has written. This is a very odd script. Penciling and inking by Henry Scarpelli, of course, who we know from years of work at Archie, especially on the daily strip that he drew for years and years. Lettering by the legendary Bill Yoshida. Coloring and production by Barry Grossman. Let's start at the start of the story here. This issue begins with the end of the school year. Everyone's hanging out at Pop's, making their plans for the summer, and Archie opens this letter from Archie Comics Publications. And this doesn't seem like an odd thing. Within the setting of this story, there's Riverdale, and there's the Archie Comics offices, and this is totally not a shock to anyone. But the letter received from Archie reads, "Dear Archie, while you're only 17, countless millions have been reading and laughing about your adventures for many years. In fact, next year, Archie Comics will celebrate its 50th anniversary. We want to let you know that we're all working very hard to make it the best year ever. If you and your pals have any ideas for this special event, give us a call. Sincerely, Archie Comics Publications Incorporated," and this is signed by Michael Silberkleit and Richard Goldwater. Now, as I said, this issue came out in 1990. 1991 would be the 50th anniversary of Archie's first appearance in Pep Comics, 1941. And this letter is on Archie Comics letterhead. It's really nice looking. And it's notable in that both Michael Silberkleit and Richard Goldwater have passed away. And they both feature prominently in this issue. So Archie reads this, decides that he and the gang are all going to get jobs at Archie Comics. They're all going to head up there and be summertime interns. It's at this point in the story that we're introduced to Michael Silberkleit and Richard Goldwater, who are away from the offices and enjoying some leisure time. They're talking on some brilliantly late 80s, early 90s cordless telephones. And we establish that they are away from the offices. So the Riverdale kids show up, and they are quickly shown around and sent to other departments. And here's where things get a little odd. I'm really confused as to who the target audience is for this particular comic book, because there's a real intentional push to list all of the contributors to the comics. There's an entire page that's just the various Riverdale kids heading over to the office doors of the departments that they're going to go into, and each office door has a long list of contributors who work in that department. So it seems like this could potentially have been an issue that was made to be circulated internally within Archie Comics, perhaps, because there are a lot of folks around the office who are pictured, whose characters are drawn into the book. But certainly that readers of this era, and certainly children, wouldn't recognize at all. There are people here that I don't recognize, and I don't know if folks from back then are still working in the offices. I certainly don't know who the receptionist was at Archie in 1990, but she has a very prominent role in this issue, and I assume that she's a real person who's caricatured by Henry Scarpelli for the issue. With getting back to the story, with all the Riverdale kids dispersed throughout the offices, we see the page when Richard and Michael find out that the Riverdale kids have taken over the offices, and they quickly rush back to see what kind of damage they have done. And they get there and assess the damage. Of course, all the Riverdale kids are doing their best. Reggie has taken over the marketing department and has decided to change all of the Archie branded products to Reggie branded products. Things like that. Lots of madcap insanity. So the folks get back and they decide, what are we going to do to control the Riverdale kids? They're running rampant in the office. They bring in all of their teachers. So now you have Principal Weatherby, you have Miss Grundy, you have Miss Beasley, you have Professor Flutesnoot, and you have Svensson. Why Svensson is there, I have no idea. And they give their opinions on what's going to work to get to get rid of the kids and get them back to Riverdale to stop screwing up the offices. And then that has no effect, so they do what they should have done initially. And this is where it gets crazy and kind of metatextual and super odd, is they send out the Archie Enterprises private jet flown by David Silverglide to pick up all of the Archie creative staff, all of the writers and artists. And there's a great page of all of them getting off the plane, and they're all wearing shirts with their names on them, which is, again, confusing. Like, why would you need to label, why would you feel inclined to label all of the artists and writers, but not all of the staff that you're showing throughout the offices? Super odd. Anyway, we have a panel of all of the folks getting off the plane, and right down the line, wearing T-shirts and blazing with their names, we get Amanda Connor, who, of course, went on to be a huge DC artist. We get the legendary Dan DeCarlo, Rudy Lepic, Bill Yoshida, Jim DeCarlo, Doug Crane, Rod O, Kathleen Webb, Stan Goldberg, Bob Bowling, Sam Schwartz, Mike Esposito, Hal Smith. Hal Smith, who we talked about a few episodes back. Crazy, there he is. And Rex Lindsay is in here, George Gladier, Dan Parent hanging out in the back with long hair. I never knew he had long hair. And these folks get together and solve the problem by writing them and drawing them out of the story. Baffling. Just baffling. There's a panel where the Archies are performing on a stage, and then they poof out of existence. So the writers are standing there having a conversation, and one says, "Phew, that was close. Great job." And someone says to George Gladier, "George, where'd you put the gang?" And he says, "Where they should have been in the first place." And he's written them into the comic book. And then we're left with a rather baffling final giant splash page of all the staff of Archie and all the writers and freelancers and everybody saying, "Have a great summer." And that's it. That's where we leave it. Why was this comic made? How was this comic made? Who is the intended audience? Was this written and drawn specifically for the staff to read? Was it written and drawn specifically for, kids to pick up and read, or Archie super fans, or what? It's certainly an interesting and crazy issue, but I had a lot of fun reading this week's book of the week. Archie Giant Series Magazine presents Pep Comics number 614. All right, Archie news this week is a big week for Archie Comics. We're going to hit the highlights. First of all, over at IGN.com this week, we're talking about Archie's contribution to Halloween Comic Fest. This is a yearly event that's been going on for quite a while. That is not unlike Free Comic Book Day, but a lot of comic publishers put together little ash can editions. They're about half the size of a normal comic book. Thin, maybe 16 pages or so. Cool little promotional books that they give away to kids who come into the shops trick-or-treating, or young folks that come in. They're a promotional endeavor to get kids into comics, and they're generally Halloween themed. Archie does one every year. They're usually a lot of fun. This year, they are doing a prequel comic to the upcoming Sonic the Hedgehog game, Sonic Lost World. So be on the lookout for that. Those books should be in your shop at the end of October. Over at HollywoodReporter.com, we got a trailer for the new Fox series. I've been talking your ear off about the Fox series. I'm super excited about the Fox series. That is Mark Waid and Dean Haspel's upcoming series we're going to see in the next few weeks based on the classic MLJ superhero, the Fox. Head over, check out that terrific sort of limited animation trailer. Looks really, really good. Over at themarysue.com this week, we got a premiere of the Jeff Schultz variant cover for Betty and Veronica number 269. Jeff Schultz is doing a whole series, it seems like. I hope these keep coming. This whole series of variant covers placing the Riverdale kids into classic pieces of Americana, classic American paintings. We got the Norman Rockwell inspired cover for the most recent issue of Archie 647, I believe, that we talked about last week. And the upcoming Betty and Veronica number 269 has Betty and Veronica in the role of Rosie the Riveter from that classic promotional art. That looks awesome. Also this week on tvline.com, we got some promotional stills and finally a release date for Sabrina, Secrets of a Teenage Witch, the new animated series coming from Moonscoop Productions. Really excited about this show and really interested in seeing what kind of angle they're going to take with this. It seems like it's going to be more of a superhero-themed story than anything we've seen from Sabrina in the past. But that series will premiere on October 12th, and over on tvline.com, they have some promotional images we haven't seen yet of character designs, and it gives you an overall impression of what that animation is going to look like. I'm pretty excited about it. Finally, I guess we're going to end on a bit of a downer. The Harvey Awards were announced last weekend at Baltimore Comic-Con. And while Archie was nominated for a number of them, 6 or 8, a lot, completely stiffed on the Harvey Awards, unfortunately. That's a real drag. They did go to some pretty deserving books. Saga really swept a lot of them. But unfortunately, Archie Comics, no Harvey Awards this year. That is all the big news this week. Tons more news coming out of Archie this week. These are the highlights by my estimation. But head over to RiverdalePodcast.com. In the post for this episode, you'll see links to all of these stories. All right, new releases. It's a wacky week for new releases. This past Wednesday, September the 11th, we got 0 books. We got no books coming out of Archie this week. It looked like a bunch were scheduled, but they seem to have been pushed off until next week. I'm not sure exactly what happened, but I hit up both of my shops this week, found no Archie comics, headed over to archiefans.com to sort of poll the folks there, and it looks like a general consensus that we didn't get anything this week. Next week looks like it is totally loaded down. Next week, September the 18th, we will be getting Archie and Friends Double Digest number 31 for $3.99. Archie Double Digest number 243 for $3.99. The Jughead Double Digest. That's the giant 320-page digest. That's Jughead Double Digest number 196 for $5.99. Mega Man number 29 for $2.99. Look out for the Dean Haspiel variant cover on Mega Man number 29. Also, Sonic Universe number 56 for $2.99. That's the second part of that pirate storyline we talked about a few weeks back. Also, World of Archie number 32 for $3.99 next week. And hopefully, keep your eye out for the Archie Comics 1,000-page extravaganza. That is the literally 1,000-page digest coming out as part of the 1,000-page series, it seems like. And that is $14.99. Over on the digital side of things, from Archie, over on the Archie Comics app and at digital.archiecomics.com, we got the new Archies collection. The new Archies are now the old Archies, but the new Archies was, of course, the animated series that premiered in the late 80s. And there was a tie-in comic book that ran right along beside that animated series with a number of great Archie artists and writers working on it. And this week, we get the digital exclusive of New Archies for $3.99. That's over 100 pages of story based on that animated series. And so, those are your new releases for this past Wednesday, the 11th of September. This coming Wednesday, the 18th of September, and your digital releases of the week from Archie Comics. Finally today, I wanted to wrap up by talking about the upcoming trade paperback, Betty and Veronica's Princess Storybook. This is a collection of all of those great storybook issues that have been coming out from the Betty Veronica book, written by Dan Parent, drawn by the amazing Jeff Schultz. This is a $9.99 trade paperback. Now, this is scheduled to be released on the 9th of October currently. And I bring it up this week because it seems unlikely that we'll be seeing it as early as the 9th of October, for a couple of reasons. One is that so far we don't have final art for the cover. If you go and look that up on Amazon or any of your sites, Things from Another World, places like that, you'll get a mock-up of the cover, but not the finished cover. And also, this is a series that's set to include the storylines of Rapunzel, Betty and the Beast, Snow White, Little Mermaid, and Rumpelstiltskin. But as it stands, Betty and Veronica number 268 is set to be the Rumpelstiltskin, or the Reggie Stiltskin storyline in this particular instance. That issue is set to come out on the 16th of October, a week after this one. I'm presuming that they're going to wait until all of these issues are produced, are put out as singles, as 32s, before we get the collection. It's rare that Archie puts out something like a collection as early as that, as close to the release of the final issue in that storyline. So we'll have to wait and see. I've been having a lot of fun with these stories, having a lot of fun seeing Jeff Schultz back at Archie Comics, and it looks like he's going to continue on and do Betty and Veronica stories beyond that. As we said in the news portion of the show, he is doing the variant cover for Betty and Veronica 269. He's also doing the interiors for that. But I digress. Betty and Veronica's Princess Storybook is a $9.99 trade paperback collecting those 5 storybook issues. We'll wait and see for what the final release date is going to be for that. But I will keep you posted, and I'll let you know when things change. But until then, keep an eye out for Betty and Veronica number 268, the final story in that collection of storybook stories. It's going to be Reggie Stiltskin, coming up on the 16th of October. Downloading the show every week, listening to the show every week, being part of the conversation, sending in emails, letting people know about the show. These are all great ways to help the show keep going. Another great way to help out the show is to head over to RiverdalePodcast.com and click on any of the links that lead you to Amazon. There are a number of links on that page to different products. If you click on those, anything you buy during that visit to Amazon.com, a percentage of that will go to support the show. So if you head over to RiverdalePodcast.com, click on any of those recommended Archie books, and from there, if you buy a stereo or a rake or a book or a magazine or a CD or a DVD or a Blu-ray or whatever you buy on Amazon, a small percentage of it will go back into the show to support the show and keep us rolling. So thanks to everyone who's been doing that. It's a big help. And thanks for everyone else for considering it. On the way out, I want to remind everyone to head over to RiverdalePodcast.com. There you're going to see the great Henry Scarpelli cover for this week's Book of the Week. Below that, you'll see the links to all of the news stories we talked about in the episode today. You'll also find links there to like the show on Facebook, facebook.com/Riverdale Podcast. You'll find a link to follow the show on Twitter, twitter.com/Riverdale Pod. You'll find a link to email us at riverdalepodcast@yahoo.com. You can subscribe to the show on iTunes, have new episodes delivered every Saturday morning right to your iTunes. If you're listening through iTunes, please write a review for the show. It's really helpful in getting people to find the show. You can also listen on Stitcher through the Stitcher mobile app. You can listen on YouTube, youtube.com/Riverdale Podcast. I think that's going to do it for this week. I think that's everything. Brace yourself for next week's tidal wave of new digests. Thanks so much for listening, you guys. Again, my name is Jonathan, and I'll see you again next week here in lovely Riverdale, US.